Hey guys, welcome to this very special video and a very special guest. If you've been watching TFL, you might know Paul, but if you haven't been, this is Paul, our race car driver. And Paul, you have a unique distinction. What is that? Besides being a good race car driver.
That's an open-ended comment. I guess the one you're speaking of is that I used to be the Stig on Top Gear.
Yep, on Top Gear USA. And in this video, we're going to be talking about well, it's not new, but it's a new version of the Lamborghini Huracan, the Technica, which you just drove in California. We're going to do a deep dive right after a word from our sponsor.
It took a while to get up here. We started out around 1959. But we didn't do all that just to get here. We did it to give you a truck that'll take you anywhere. This is the new Nissan.
All right, Paul, so Lamborghini obviously doesn't build a lot of cars, right? In fact, they only build 3, maybe 2 cars now. The top of the line is the Aventador, which they had just announced is going away with the final edition. Then the one to rule them all in terms of sales is the Urus, which is the obviously the SUV. And then, of course, the one you drove is the replacement for what I drove, which was the Gallardo, which is now the Huracan Tecnica. So tell me about the Technica. What was kind of the engineering focus on that vehicle?
Well, the Huracan, it was like 2014 that car came out and replaced the Gallardo. They had several versions of it. Most of them all-wheel drive, all of them with this V10 engine. And they've kept refining it. And then they came out, they sort of decided along the way, sort of like they did with the Gallardo, that the rear-wheel drive versions were a lot more fun for enthusiasts and people that wanted to drive them on the track. So they came out with the Evo in a rear-wheel drive. Then they also kept an all-wheel drive Evo. And then they did the STO, and the STO was like the full bonkers GT3 RS sort of version. Like, it's kind of the car that they base their Super Trofeo race car on. The STO, and the STO has all the big wings and the downforce, and it's super loud, and the suspension's super stiff. It's just, a track day car, basically, that has license plates on it. So the Technica, as you might guess, is like sits dead in the middle. And the Technica part of it is the technical, which is saying that we have enough technology in this car that it can play like an STO, because you can stiffen the thing up like crazy. And it has more downforce and everything than the Evo. But then you can also soften it up in the street modes to drive around like the Evo. So it's kind of like your happy zone right in the middle there, the sweet spot, kind of Huracan.
So you were just in California at the track driving this. So let's cut to some video of you actually giving us a walk around of this car so you guys can see what we're talking about.
It's the latest, and they say the last version of the Huracan, and it is 2-wheel drive. It has 631 horsepower. It has the Bridgestone race tires, which is the equivalent of the Cup 2. You can get it on the street version tire or the race tire. We have the race tires here. It's got some cool aerodynamic bits around it here and there. Of course, the hexagonal exhaust pipes that, if you follow back, lead us to one of the most magical engines in the automotive kingdom. It is Lamborghini's 5.2-liter naturally aspirated. You got to say that with emphasis because it's so rare these days. Naturally aspirated V10 engine that wails all the way up to 8,500 RPMs, making 631 horsepower, 417 pound-feet of torque. A little bit of an homage to the Murcielago and even the Countach there with the vent design on the side of the car. New splitter intake. We've got actual functioning vents here. These ones are just cosmetic along the top. But of course, radiators down here. Brake cooling is underneath. But a very sleek package that makes reasonable downforce. It's about 30% greater than the Evo, and it has 22% less drag than the Evo. So again, somewhere between the STO and the Evo is where the Technica sits quite happily. When we look at the wheel tire package, we've got 2 45 30/20s on the front and 3 05 30/20s on the rear, all with these wonderful carbon ceramic brakes. Again, I mentioned there's a special ducting that's going on with these brakes to send air through the calipers, so they're claiming 10 to 12%, depending on the metric, improved brake cooling, and certainly you can use them over and over and again on the track. These beautiful forged, very light 5-spoke wheels, and again, just these big old honking 305s on the back.
All right, so tell me about the track day. You had some fun with, I think it was one of their race car drivers, right?
Yeah, it was actually Richard Antonucci, who's the guy that won the Super Trofeo Championship last year. And so he was their top guy. He's one of their top school guys. And just if you don't know this, like what they do is generally when you go to a press event, they'll kind of pair you up with someone and they'll lead you around. Now he's in an STO, which is the quicker car, and he's really good in these cars. He drives them all the time. He's been with Lamborghini for like 15 years. And so I followed Richard around, and he kind of gave me that wink like we were going to go out and have fun. And
let me interject here, okay?
Yeah.
Now, normally, like I drove the STO, right?
Yeah, it wasn't like this.
Yeah, so I got to drive it at Big Willow, and maybe you can actually show some video of me clenching my butt as I go around the track. And
there's seatbelts now, you don't need to do that.
yes, and they had a lead driver for me, so I was following the lead driver around, and when he said, let's put it in STO mode, which basically, it was an STO, it was, God, what was it? It was track mode.
Like
Corsa mode.
Yeah.
Let's put in Corsa mode. And I'm like, in a breaking, cracking voice, I say, what does that mean? He goes, oh, we just get rid of all the natties.
Yeah.
and for me, that was probably one of the most terrifying statements of the year. But for you,
yes,
that was, okay, let's go and have some fun.
It was like, I'm not going to be bored here, so we're going to have fun. You've got a really good guy for me to chase, and I'm going to have to work to chase him. And they're kind of giving me lots of leash to really use the car, which is exactly what we went out and did.
Oh, and I like this car. The rear end really works on this car. So the balance is just fantastic. You don't have any problems with mid-corner understeer. If anything, you're just always managing a little bit of oversteer with the car. .631 horsepower, 417 pound-feet of torque. Carbon ceramic brakes with some new cooling on those brakes. Very proud of that they were able to get better airflow into the braking system. That's always a nice thing because, you got the same brakes, but you're able to cool them better. They're already the biggest brakes you could put on something.
So there are kind of three kinds of cars, sports cars that exist, in not just Lamborghini world, but in Porsche world, and in today's high-performance sports car world, right? There are sports cars that you can take on the track.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And then the opposite side of that coin, there are race cars that you can take on the road.
Yes, exactly.
And those are very different.
Very different.
Very different.
Yeah.
And then there's this, right, which is something in the middle. So the STO is definitely a race car. I mean, I was at the press conference. They based it on their race car.
Yeah.
And ironically, it's so loud that
of course.
you can't take it on many tracks. But that's a whole different story.
Yeah.
So tell me about the driving impressions. What's it like to drive this beast?
Well, I think just like let's set the bar where it is today, and I think that's the thing that maybe people don't realize is that how good and fast these cars are getting. And I think with all of the focus, or a lot of the focus these days, placed on electrification, meanwhile in the background, car manufacturers are turning out amazing internal combustion engine cars. Sometimes they're calling it their last car, the last type of car like this, but it doesn't change the fact that we are sort of in this era right now where you can buy cars, just walk into your dealership and buy one. All right, you can't even do that with any car these days, but
one day,
put down your money, pay the extra and you could walk out with this car, and they are absolutely astonishing in their performance potential. So the cars are now pulling around a low-speed skid pad, where you used to get over a G and you'd be like, that's incredible, it'd suck your face off. Now we're like 1.2, 1.3. And I'll tell you, like a real race car around a skid pad's about 1.5, 1.6, and then the downforce starts adding as you go faster. So this gap is narrowing. And so these cars are not like, everyone used to ask me on Top Gear, what's your favorite car? And I always used to say, Oh, there's no road car that's really that dynamic or interesting, because I've been lucky enough to race my whole life. And so I've been in race cars, and race cars are this whole other level. That argument is starting to go away. Like, I can't really say that anymore. These road cars with these tires and these suspensions, now they have these suspensions that can adjust, and now all sorts of downforce and the ability to lower the car because they can raise the nose for driveway. So that allows them to have a lower car on the road when you're not on that steep driveway or going across a speed bump. This performance level, I think, kind of snuck up on us that these cars can produce now. It's pretty incredible.
Let's go into sport mode there. And now into Corsa. So you get different gauge displays, of course, much more performance on Corsa. Back to sport, and of course you can hear the exhaust go quiet as we go to Strada, which is the street mode. There's Strada, and it's actually really quiet in Strada. Listen, there's hardly any exhaust tone at all. Really, all I can hear humming behind me is that V10 engine, but no exhaust notes. So that's kind of the case they make for this thing being so easy to drive on the road. Just again, pull that, boom, one more, Strada. So very easy to do within the three modes, and very distinctively different between those three modes. So again, well done Lamborghini. Magneto-rheological shocks, really cool stuff with stability traction control that they can do now in the ABS system. Of course, the exhaust system, engine response, throttle response mapping, all of those things part of this. And you end up with a very distinctly different vehicle in each of the modes, and therefore something that can kind of pass the mother-in-law test. I'm not sure where you're going to put her, but she'd probably not mind riding around in this thing in Strada mode. And the HMI is this 8.4-inch screen. You've got the cool Lamborghini toggle switches here, and of course the flip-up DEFCON 5 nuclear arsenal start-stop button. Very similarly styled without the red on it. Your regular buttons there. A tiny little armrest and a key. So pretty, not a lot of storage space within the car. Of course, no map pockets in those carbon fiber doors. We do have a glove box though, so that's pretty good. There's a little tiny bit of room up there, but not a whole bunch. It's got a big lump in it here for some good reason, I'm sure. But such a cool car. And then looking at the HMI, it's fairly responsive. You can see there's a little bit of a lag to it, but it does have CarPlay. It does have Android Auto. So it has all those integrated functions. It even has a function within it where you can find your car as far as a parking space is concerned if you leave it parking. There's all sorts of that normal car stuff in the car here. So that's kind of cool. And, that kind of, again, improves its function over time. You got to get used to the Lamborghini turn signals, which are basically on the left side. I like this better than Ferrari. Ferrari has a button here and one here, and it's kind of a pain because you have to have two hands on the wheel all the time. This one you can actually use your left hand like you would a car that has a normal stalk. So all fairly simple ergonomics throughout the car. It doesn't look very Audi in here. Their little pictograms are, but it looks pretty bespoke, as the brand says. It's a Lamborghini. So very good, lots of hexagons everywhere, kind of, sort of that theme of the hexagon throughout the Lamborghini cars. They've had that all the way back to the Marzal, which was the prototype for the Espada. That was the first one I saw the hexagons on. That was in the late 60s, so they've been kind of sticking with that shape for a while. So the brand that is based on the bulls also likes the bees, evidently. Just saying.
All right, in Lamborghini world, there are really only three vehicles, right? We were talking about the STO, right, which is a race car for the road. Would it be fair to say that kind of competes with the brand new Porsche 911 GT3 RS?
Yes.
And this is more like a GT3 competitor.
Yes, that's perfect, exactly. And then you could look at it on the McLaren lineup as well and say, this is more like a 600 LT, not a 765. So you look at it like that, and you base it a little bit on price point, but these cars are all sort of stratospheric, and you can do $150,000 in options on any of them and make them priced very close to one another if you do that. But I think performance levels and horsepower levels, because there is like a bigger, this car's 631 horsepower. You get into the Ferrari, the McLarens, they all have a higher level where the cars are at about 700, 750. This is a slightly lower range, so you're kind of more into the GT3 to your
Which is, I think, 580, if I remember right.
It's like 518.
Is it 518?
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah. So that car.
I knew there was an 8 in there.
Yeah, exactly.
A 5 and an 8.
Yeah, you just had the 8 and the 1 transposed. But yeah, so they're just like a 500 horsepower car. So this actually is, the Huracan is kind of in between the really fast McLaren and Ferraris, and then getting down into this. And then there's a bit of a wild card too to throw into this mix, by the way. The Corvette, the Z06, 670 horsepower, flat plane crank, 8,500 RPM V8, and the thing flat out rips.
So the Corvette on paper is much more affordable. Like we're looking at like $100K less. How much is this?
$239.
So Corvette starts, like I said, about $100K less. But once again, they're on Optanium, and the dealers are marking them up. So
it's a weird world we live in right now, where it almost is price independent and it's availability dependent. Like you're just going to buy what you can buy because you don't want to wait 2 years to get the thing you really wanted. So there's a lot of that going on right now for sure.
That was really fun. Following a really good pro driver in the STO, and technically quicker, but he's on the regular tires, I'm on the race tires, so it pretty much levels the cars out. And we just went at it for 4 laps or so, and the car was just right there the whole time. And I was like a race car. I'm just managing my rear tires. That was my job the whole time, was if I let the car slip or slide too much, then obviously I put too much heat in the tires. And if I do that, cumulatively it gets worse and worse and worse every lap that I go, every corner that I take. And so that's what a battle ends up being between drivers, is you're trying to drive as efficient as you can. In other words, as fast a lap time as you can get away with without burning up your rear tires, because you might only be able to do that for 1 lap if you're sloppy about it. But if you're careful, you can sustain it. And that's what racing is. It's a battle of tire management, just like that I just had here. And that was epic, fantastic.
All right, so I got to ask, what did you like about the car? And more importantly, maybe what did you not like about it?
Well, I'll start with what I didn't like. There's only a couple things really. And it's more me, like you would have been okay with any of this. It's a stature thing. Mm-hmm. Like the steering wheel didn't go down far enough for me, so I kind of had to hold my hands up a little bit on, and this is one of those things you notice in the pit lane, and then you never notice while you're out there driving, and then you notice in the pit lane again.
Yeah.
So it would bug me on the road. In other words, it doesn't bother me on the track. The other thing I don't like is the way they do their paddles, which is the same way Ferrari does them. And
so
they mount them on the column. Yeah. And they make them longer, but still inevitably, like I had this moment where I had this snap oversteer slide, and I couldn't get the gear shift, so it made the slide turn into kind of this little tank slapper, because all I needed to do was just slot it into third, and I could have just driven it away smoothly. But the car wouldn't go because I was at the limiter in second, and I couldn't get that shift done. So it's just like this little awkward moment. So you do just technically, hey, I wrote a book on driving. You're only supposed to be upshifting and downshifting on a straightaway. I get it. But sometimes in certain corner combinations and situations, you have these little outlier moments where it sure would be nice to pull a gear up or down, and if your hands aren't in the right spot with these column mounted, of course, where are they on Ferrari and McLaren's Formula One cars? Oh, they're on the steering wheel, because they know this, but it's just become part of their road car thing, So I don't think there's much of an excuse for it. So that's something that kind of bothered me about the Technica, was that it had the paddles there. As far as the good things, right? The list is long and worthy. It's really this car where in that strata mode, which is the street mode, it is very soft and compliant. It's like an Evo. You could drive it around and not have an issue with it. You get in sport mode, of course, that's the middle ground, and then you chuck it in Corsa. And as you know from driving the STO, like Corsa is like no joke, and it raises the stability control limits and all that stuff. I may or may not have turned all that off additionally on top of that, but it does allow you freedom with the car. And then because of all this technology, right? So we're changing steering, we're changing suspension, we're changing engine, we're changing brake response, we're changing basically everything within the vehicle. A lot of cases you're changing ride height. And so all of a sudden, here's this car, and it does this little transformer trick by just boop, the little steering wheel, rocker switch, bam, Corsa mode. It's kind of magic, modern day magic. So the car has this really great platform, and it has this really good suspension, and so Richard and I were hammering across the curbs because we were trying to get, he was trying to get away from me, and I was trying to keep up with him. So it turned into, as he described it, every time he went out, he goes, it was another 20-minute qualifying session. We were just going for it.
That's great. I feel like you went through, their week supply of tires.
Well, he did say that, actually, because my tires were supposed to last. We've now used them all. And I'm like, you're welcome.
And brakes.
Yeah, and brakes, yeah. We were pushing so hard, and the greatest compliment I could give the car is it disappeared around me. And all I was focusing on was pushing Richard. And as hard as I could, right? And watching him squirm as a result, which was great glee to me.
So guys, let me know if you like this new form of video that we're doing. We'd love to get your input. We'd love to send Paul to actually drive the new GT3 RS, which already had a drive in Europe, and I suspect there'll be one here in the US, so we'd like to get him on that. And let us know if you appreciate these more in-depth, more, I would say, deep dive sorts of videos that, Paul can obviously talk to, and I'm kind of floundering. So I'd rather have the expert do this.
I'm the color commentary. What can I say?
I'll just ask the questions.
You do it well.
All right. Well, thank you for watching. Remember, check out alltfl.com for all of our videos, podcasts, and, of course, breaking news stories. See you guys next time. Ciao.